Humans were not the first. Not the first to think. Not the first to build. Not the first to look at the sky and try to read it. The Sumerian tablets are not vague about this, and they are not poetic about it. They state it the way they stated everything, as a record. Before the first human drew breath, the world was already occupied. And the tablets do something stranger than simply saying so. They count. They list the kinds of being that existed before us. Not gods in the vague sense you are imagining, specific categories, specific functions, each one named, each one assigned a role, each one given a status in the same administrative system that tracked grain and silver and the reigns of kings. 6 of them. 6 kinds of being that were here before humanity, written into the record by scribes who treated their existence as established fact, not legend. And for 5 of those 6, the record tells you where they went. 1 was replaced. 1 withdrew. 1 was sealed away. 1 dissolved back into what it came from. 1 was killed, deliberately, as part of a procedure. 5 files. 5 closed. But there is a 6th. And the 6th is the only one the tablets never mark as gone. No termination. No departure. No seal. The file stays open. Because according to the record, the 6th is still here. This investigation is the Registry. All 6, what they were, what they did, and where the tablets say each one went. We will take them in order, and we will end on the one whose file was never closed. Because by the time we reach it, you will understand why the scribes could not close it. It is the one closest to you. Before the list, one thing has to be clear, because it changes how you read everything that follows. The Mesopotamian scribes did not divide the world into natural and supernatural. That division is ours. It did not exist for them. A god, a king, a river, a sage, a demon. All of these were entries in the same system. All of them had names. All of them had functions. All of them could be registered, tracked, and, when their function ended, closed out. So when the tablets list beings that existed before humans, they are not telling you a creation myth the way a Sunday school tells one. They are giving you an inventory, a record of what occupied the system before the current occupants, us, were created and installed. And the word that matters most is installed, because the tablets are consistent on one point that almost no retelling preserves. Humanity was not the goal. Humanity was a solution, a workforce created to take over a job that the previous beings refused to keep doing. To understand who we replaced, you have to start with the ones who were doing the work before us. That is the first entry. The first beings on the list are the Igigi. In the older strata of the tradition, before the system was tidied up by later theologians, the cosmos was run by 2 tiers of divine being. The senior tier, the decision-makers, the administrators, and below them, the Igigi, the working class of the gods, the ones who actually did the labor. And the labor was real. The Atrahasis epic, one of the oldest surviving accounts of human origins, predating Genesis by over 1,000 years, describes it plainly. Before humans existed, it was the Igigi who dug the rivers, who cleared the canals, who hauled the earth and maintained the irrigation that kept the whole system alive. For 3,000 years, by the text's own reckoning, they carried the load. And then they stopped. The Atrahasis describes something no other ancient origin story dares to: a labor strike. The Igigi, exhausted, set fire to their tools in the night, surrounded the house of the senior administrator, and refused to work. Not a war, not a rebellion for power, a work stoppage. They were tired, the burden was crushing, and they laid it down. This is the moment everything turns. Because the senior gods, faced with a workforce that would no longer work, did not punish the Igigi. They agreed with them. And they made the decision the entire rest of the record depends on. they would create a new being to carry the load instead. That new being is us. The Igigi are entry 1 because they are the reason humanity exists at all. We were made to take their place. Their file is marked the way a completed assignment is marked. Function transferred. Status replaced. The first beings before humans did not vanish in a catastrophe. They simply handed us the shovel.
The second entry is the one you have probably heard before, and almost certainly heard wrong. The Anunnaki. Popular culture has turned this word into a single thing, a race of alien overlords usually. The tablets are more precise and more interesting. Anunnaki is a collective term for the senior tier, the decision-making gods, the ones who sat in council, assigned destinies, and ran the system the Igigi labored under. Where the Igigi worked, the Anunnaki decided. They are the administrators of the world that existed before us, and they are the ones who voted to create humanity. Not out of kindness, but because the work needed doing, and someone had to do it. What happened to them is the second closed file, and it is closed differently than the first. The Anunnaki did not strike. They did not get replaced. According to the broader tradition, as the current epoch was established and humanity was installed to run the day-to-day operations of the world, the senior administration progressively withdrew. They moved up and out. Some texts place them in the heavens, some in the underworld as judges, some simply receding from direct contact. The hands-on management of the world passed to humanity. The Anunnaki became remote. This is a pattern you will see repeat across this entire registry, so mark it now. The beings before us do not get destroyed. They get withdrawn, sealed, transferred, or installed elsewhere. The system does not delete, it reassigns. The Anunnaki's status is not terminated, it is withdrawn. Present somewhere in the structure, no longer in the room. The administration that built us then stepped back to let us run the floor. 2 entries in and a shape is already forming. The beings before humans were a workforce and a management. We are the workforce that replaced the workforce. And the question the registry is quietly building toward is the one nobody asks. If the management only withdrew, if it was never terminated, then it can, in principle, come back. Hold that. It matters at the end. The third entry is one this archive has touched before, but never as part of a list. And in a list, it reads differently. The Apkallu, the 7 sages. These are not laborers and not administrators. They are something more specific and more unsettling. Teachers. According to the tradition preserved by the Babylonian priest Berosus and corroborated in cuneiform texts, before the flood, 7 beings emerged from the Apsu, the freshwater deep, to bring civilization to a humanity that did not yet have it. They came cloaked in the form of fish. They taught writing, law, agriculture, mathematics, the building of cities, the reading of the sky. Everything that separates a civilization from a settlement, the Apkallu are said to have delivered. And here is the detail that matters for this registry. They did not stay. Once the knowledge was delivered, the Apkallu returned to the Apsu they came from. They went back down. The waters closed over them. Their file is not marked replaced like the Igigi, or withdrawn like the Anunnaki. It is marked something closer to sealed. They are described as having gone back into a closed place, the deep, from which they had emerged, and from which, the texts imply, they could emerge again if the conditions called for it. The Apkallu are entry 3 because they establish a principle the first 2 only hinted at. The beings before us were not just present. They were the source of what we know. The civilization humanity runs on was, according to the record,
handed to us by something that then went back below the water and sealed the door behind it. 3 beings, 1 replaced, 1 withdrawn, 1 sealed. And in every case, the same quiet structural fact. The door was never described as locked from our side.
The 4th entry goes back further than the other 3, further than civilization, further than the labor, before the system had even been switched on. Lahmu and Lahamu. These are the first beings to be named in the Enuma Elish. The first entities to emerge after the primordial waters of Apsu and Tiamat mingled. Before the senior gods, before the administration, before anyone had a function, there were Lahmu and Lahamu. The first forms to come out of the undifferentiated deep. The first things to have names at all. They are barely described. They have almost no story. And that is precisely the point. They are the registry's entry for the first beings, about whom almost nothing can be said, because they belong to a state of the system so early that there was not yet much of a system to describe them with. Their status is the strangest in the whole list. They are not replaced, not withdrawn, not sealed. They are foundational, built into the base layer of the structure and never removed, because removing them would mean removing the bottom of the system itself. They persist the way a foundation persists, present, load-bearing, and almost never thought about. The tradition does not record an end for Lahmu and Lahamu. It records them as the first, and then the system grows on top of them, and they fade from the narrative not because they left, but because the story moved upward and never looked back down. Entry 4 is the floor. The oldest beings, still underneath everything, holding it up, unremarked. And with the floor established, the registry turns to the entry where the whole thing stops being a history lesson and becomes something about you. The 5th entry is a single being, not a category, not a class. 1. His name was We-ila. In some copies, simply We. In others, Auilu. The variation in the name is itself a clue to how old and how worn this part of the record is. We-ila is the being the senior gods chose when they decided to create humanity. Remember the structure. The Igigi struck, the Anunnaki agreed to make a replacement, and a replacement had to be made out of something. It was not made out of nothing. The Atrahasis is graphic about the procedure. They took a god, We-ila, and they killed him. Deliberately, as the raw material. His flesh was mixed with clay. His blood was mixed into the mixture. And one more thing, the component this entire archive keeps returning to, his itemu, the part of a being that persists, the ghost in the loosest translation, though the word is more technical than that, the functional residue of a being that continues after the body is gone. We-ila's itemu was not sent to the underworld where the dead are registered. It was not filed away. It was bound into the clay, mixed into the new being, installed into the very first human, and, through that human, into every human who would ever be made from the same template. We-ila's file is marked terminated. He was killed. As a being, he ended. The 5th entry is the only one the tablets describe as deliberately destroyed. But here is where the registry does something no other list does. Because if you have been counting, if you have been tracking the status of each being as we go, you have noticed that 5 entries are now accounted for. The Igigi replaced, the Anunnaki withdrawn, the Apkallu sealed, Lahmu and Lahamu foundational, We-ila terminated. 5 files, 5 closed, which leaves the 6th, the one the tablets never close. And the reason they never close it is that the 6th being is not somewhere out there in the deep, or up in the heavens, or sealed behind a door.
The 6th being is We-ila's itemu. Read that again, because it is the entire point of the registry. We-ila, entry 5, was terminated as a being. But the part of him that persists, the itemu, was not terminated with him.
It was extracted before termination and installed into the new creation, into us. The fifth file and the sixth file describe the same original being, split into two. The body that was destroyed and the component that was not. One file closed, one file open. Forever. Because the Atemu did not go anywhere. It was not sent to Kur, the underworld where the records of the dead are kept. It was not returned to the deep like the Apkallu. It was bound into the human template at the moment of creation, and it has been carried, silently, in every human being ever made for the entire length of the current epoch. That is why the sixth file cannot be closed. You cannot mark a being as departed when it is still walking around. You cannot seal it away when it is distributed across every member of the species that replaced its original owner. The scribes had no status code for still present, but not as itself. So they left the file open. The being that existed before humans and is still here is inside the human. This is the part the tradition states with a precision that should stop you. The Atemu was described as dormant. Present, but not operational. Integrated into the human design, but not active. Like a component installed in a machine that has not yet been switched on. It does its quiet structural work. Some texts associated with the very thing that makes a human more than clay, the spark of awareness itself. But its full function, whatever that was meant to be, has never run. And in the previous investigation, the one about the signs before the return, the record named the condition under which a dormant component activates. 3 external signs observed in sequence, and then a fourth, which is not external at all. The fourth sign was described as an internal change in the population, the Atemu of the prior administration becoming active in the people who carry it. Put the 2 investigations together, and the registry resolves into something colder than a list of ancient beings. 5 of the 6 beings that existed before humans are accounted for and gone. The 6th is not gone. The 6th is dormant, inside us, waiting on a sequence of signs, and the record claims 3 of those signs have already occurred. The scribes did not write this as a warning. They wrote it as an inventory entry, in the same hand they used for everything else. Being 6. Status: active, dormant. Location: the human. File: open. They simply never had a reason to believe the file would stay open forever. Step back from the 6th entry for a moment and look at the whole registry at once, because the shape of it is the real revelation, more than any single being on the list. 6 beings before humans. Arrange them not by when they appear in the texts, but by what the record says happened to each one. The Igigi were replaced by us. The Anunnaki withdrew, upward and outward, but never terminated. The Apkallu sealed themselves below. Behind a door the texts never describe as locked from our side. Lahmu and Lahamu remain as the foundation, load-bearing, underneath, unremoved. We-ila was terminated, the only deliberate ending in the list, and his Atemu was installed into us. Present, dormant, file open. Look at what is missing from that list. Not one of these beings is described as destroyed and erased. Not one is gone the way we mean when we say a species goes extinct.
Replaced. Withdrawn. Sealed. Foundational. Terminated but extracted. Installed. Every single status is a form of preservation or relocation, not deletion. This is the thing the registry is actually telling you, underneath the names and the stories. The system that produced humanity does not delete. It reassigns. It seals. It stores. It installs. Everything that was here before us is still accounted for somewhere in the structure, withdrawn to the heavens, sealed in the deep, holding up the foundation, or carried inside the very beings who replaced the workforce. And if nothing is ever truly deleted, then nothing that withdrew is permanently gone. The Anunnaki who stepped back can step forward. The Apkallu who sealed the door can open it. And the component installed in us, dormant and waiting, can switch on. The Registry is not a graveyard. A graveyard is full of closed files. This is something else. This is a system with most of its previous occupants in storage, and one of them still running quietly inside the current occupants, on standby, waiting for a signal the record claims is already partway delivered. That is the difference between this list and every other list of ancient beings you have ever seen. The others ask you to look back. This one, by the time you reach the 6th entry, is asking you to look inward. And the tradition's own answer to where the last being before humans went is not a place on a map or a layer of the cosmos. It is a mirror. Before you go, the 6th file needs you, and not in the way channels usually say that. This registry has 6 entries because 6 is what survives in the readable texts, but the tablets are damaged. There are broken lines, missing columns, entries that trail off mid-status. I have built this list from what can be read. I do not believe it is complete. And in the comments on the previous investigations, more than once, someone has named a being I had not placed, a figure from a fragment, a name from a tradition I had not connected to the registry yet. Not guesses, connections I had missed. So I am asking directly, if you know of a being the tradition places before humans, one that is not on this list of 6, put it below, with where you saw it. The Lahamu, the Sabiti, Kingu, the 7 that came after the 7. If it belongs in the registry, it goes in the next investigation, and the entry will say where it came from. And if you want to be here when the 6th file finally changes status, when the next investigation takes the dormant component and examines the exact text that describes what its activation looks like from the inside, then you already know what the archive needs from you. Not a like, not a comment, though I read those. Just stay on the list. Subscribe so that when the file updates, you are one of the ones it reaches. 5 of the 6 are gone. The 6th is reading this.